The wind clawed at her coat like it wanted her gone. Dust turned to frost at the corners of her saddlebag. Her mare limped from an old stone bruise, and still she pressed on. No maps led here, only a memory and the fire it left behind. Behind her, the towns fell away. Names blurred. She'd left nothing there worth keeping. Only one photograph folded in her pocket, worn soft at the corners. Her sister had smiled once, before the letter stopped. Now all she had was an address scrawled in a shaking hand, and the weight of a promise she hadn't spoken aloud. The sun died early this far north. By the time she saw the house, crooked and low against a dead tree line, shadows had swallowed the hills whole. She dismounted stiffly. No smoke, no dogs, no sound at all. Only the door, hanging open. Inside, the cold bit deeper than the wind. The walls were stripped bare. The hearth was cold. And from the shadows, 4 pairs of eyes watched her, silent, hollow. One child clutched another. The smallest wheezed in sleep, a wet rattle that didn't belong in a living thing. No man, just children and hunger. The house creaked with the weight of emptiness. She moved through it like through a grave, slow, deliberate, her boots leaving prints in the dust. The hearth was dead. The pantry held a single jar of beans and a sack of flour gnawed through by mice. A cradle stood in the corner, splintered on one leg. Upstairs, a rifle leaned against the wall. Unloaded. No signs of struggle, no blood, no man, just absence. Like someone had vanished mid-step. She found the ledger in a drawer, names listed in a scrawl too tired to finish. The last entry stopped a month ago. After that, nothing. As if the writer had stood up and walked out into the snow and never looked back. Downstairs, one boy stirred. His cheeks were hollow. His hands, too small for the axe by the stove, were calloused anyway. He looked at her without fear. Just the dull, familiar look of a child who'd waited too long for help and stopped believing it would come. She didn't speak. She only unrolled her bedroll in the corner, lit a flame with shaking fingers, and set a pot to boil with what little water was left in the barrel. She'd meant to ride farther. She'd meant to find a man and end something. Instead, she found a cold house, dying children, and her own breath rising like smoke in the dark. She sat beside the fire and sharpened her knife. Not because she feared the dark, but because whoever left these boys like this still had blood in their veins. By morning, she knew their names. They hadn't told her. Names lived in the small things. A carved initial on a bunk post, a stitched patch on a coat, a dog-eared page in a primer book. Silas, the oldest, maybe 10. Hands like his father's might have been, if his father had stayed. Levi, next down, already bow-legged from carrying the younger ones too far on feet too small. Eli, thin as a fence post and always coughing. He watched her like she might vanish if he blinked. And Nate, just a baby, too quiet, his breath shallow like the wind slipping through the cracks. She fed them porridge stretched thin with snowmelt. They ate in silence, the way children do when they've forgotten what full feels like. No thank yous, no tears, just the scrape of spoons and steam rising like a prayer. Outside, the snow had crusted over the road. Her mare stood stiff in the paddock, ribs showing. No one would ride out today, or tomorrow. She checked the barn. Empty stalls, a broken plow, a pile of old feed sacks turned into a rat's nest. Everything that could be traded was gone. But in the loft, she found a half-rotted trunk with her sister's name burned into the leather. Inside, a worn ribbon, a locket without a chain, and a child's dress folded so carefully it hurt to unfold it. She sat there a long time, the dress in her lap, fingers still. That man had promised a new life. Her sister had come west to build it. Now there were only the boys, and no one left to remember her name but the woman who came too late. By nightfall, she'd nailed the shutters closed, started patching the roof tarp, and boiled wild onions and scraps into a broth thick enough to keep them warm through sleep. She didn't tell the boys she was staying. She just stayed. The third morning, she found boot prints by the barn. Too wide for the boys, too fresh to ignore. They circled the house once, then vanished into the tree line. She didn't wake the children, just stepped into her coat, loaded the rifle she'd found upstairs, and followed the trail. Wind bit through the trees and every broken branch sounded louder than it should. Half a mile in, she found nothing. Not a soul. Just a spent cigarette stub still warm in the ash. Someone had been watching. She returned before the fire died. The boys were awake, clustered like pups around the pot, waiting for her to say what she never would, that something was wrong. Instead, she taught them to stack kindling, to salt meat, to boil cloth, to clean wounds. She told Silas where the rifle stayed, loaded now, not because she planned to use it, but because she knew how fast the world could decide for you. That night, she sat alone by the window, locket in hand, watching the dark. She didn't know what scared her more, that someone was coming or that no one was. She fixed the stove on the fifth day. It smoked and wheezed like something dying, but it held the fire. That was enough. The boys started to speak again, not to her, but around her, half whispers in corners, old games played in tired voices. Nate giggled once in his sleep. It startled everyone. She taught them to mend socks, to boil water twice, to check the chicken coop even though nothing had laid an egg in weeks. The days followed a rhythm now, not peace, not safety, but movement. And movement meant something lived here again. She spent her nights checking the door latch 3 times, counting the rounds she had left, running her fingers over the pages of her sister's old journal, where half the words had faded from water or grief. One line remained clear. If he doesn't come back, I'll name her Hope anyway. There was no baby girl, only 4 boys and the echo of something lost. She started locking the door from the inside, not out of fear, but because she'd found something in this cold that she hadn't known she still had, a reason to keep the fire going. It was Levi who found the dog, or what was left of it, torn open at the belly, stiff with frost, halfway down the south fence. No tracks but its own, no signs of struggle. She examined the body in silence. No wolf would leave meat untouched. No coyote worked that clean. But the cut, it was too precise. Not hunger. Message. She buried it at sundown, the boys watching from the porch. Nate cried, though he'd never known the dog. That night the wind rose hard. She sat up by the fire, shotgun across her knees. No footsteps came, but in the black between gusts, something knocked against the far wall. Once. Then silence. She did not go out. In the morning she found the barn door ajar, the mule gone, a single rope cut clean, and in the snow, scrawled in ash and blood, "You're not her." She burned the message. Then she salted the doorframe, boarded the windows tighter, and placed the loaded rifle in Silas's hands without a word. Whatever game this was, it hadn't ended with her sister. It had only just begun. He rode in like a rumor, slow, alone with the air of someone who thought he still owned the place. Midday sun behind him, coat too fine for this land, hands that hadn't split wood in months. The boys froze when they saw him. She didn't. She stepped out onto the porch with the rifle cradled in her arms like a sleeping child. He smiled. That kind of smile men wear when they lie for a living. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said. She didn't answer. The boys crowded behind her. Levi's breath hitched. Silas gripped the porch rail with white knuckles. "You their mother now?" the man asked, spitting into the dust. "That's rich." Still, she said nothing. He nodded to the house. "Place is still mine. You can ride out now, no harm done." She didn't lower the rifle, but she didn't raise it either. "Your name," she said finally. "Say it." The man blinked, confused. "Say it," she repeated. He didn't. He couldn't. Because names have weight, and cowards always lose theirs first. She stepped off the porch, boots sinking into the mud. "You sold my sister lies," she said, "then left her to starve with your shame." The wind caught the hem of her coat. The rifle stayed steady. "I buried her," she said. "You don't get to bury them too." Behind her the door opened. Silas stepped out, rifle across his chest. The man looked between them. 2 barrels, 1 memory too many. He rode off, didn't say another word, didn't look back. But they watched him go, until the dust swallowed him like the road never wanted him to begin with. That night they cooked everything. Salt pork, the last jar of beans, a pan of hardtack softened in broth. It wasn't celebration. It was claiming. The man had come and gone, and the house still stood. That meant something. The boys sat at the table like it was unfamiliar terrain. Plates in front of them, warmth behind them. A woman who hadn't run. She served them in silence, like a ritual. Levi said grace. The words stumbled, dry with dust, but they came. Nate laughed once. Silas looked at her when he thought she wouldn't notice. She saw it. Not trust, not yet, but something quieter. A crease in the wall. After supper, she let them help wash. Eli dropped a plate and started to cry. Not from the break, but from the sound. It had been too long since anything shattered without someone shouting. She knelt, wiped the floor clean, and held the boy's hand until he stopped shaking. Upstairs in the drawer beside her bed, she placed her sister's journal beneath folded linens. Not hidden, just at rest. Outside, the wind had gone still. Inside, the fire held. For the first time, the house didn't feel like a place she was passing through. It felt like a place that had chosen her back. The blizzard rolled in before dawn. By mid-morning, the sky had folded itself into ash. Snow howled against the windows. The fire sucked greedily at the last of the dry wood. She was chopping more when Silas called from the window. Someone was coming. Not on a horse, not in a wagon. Walking. She stepped outside with the shotgun slung low. Snow stung her face, thick and sharp as nails. The figure staggered up the hill. Long coat, hat pulled low, blood trailing behind every other step. Not a threat, a man on the edge of death. He collapsed 5 feet from the porch. She dragged him inside, half frozen. No questions, no thanks. Just the work. Boots off, wounds cleaned, hot rags packed tight, whiskey poured into a cracked mouth. The boys watched like ghosts. Nate clung to her skirts, wide-eyed. The man burned through fever all night, spoke no names, just mumbled a woman's song and clutched at the air like reaching for someone already gone. She stayed by his side, trading warm cloths in silence. Not out of pity, out of recognition. This land broke people. Not with fury, with time. By morning, he breathed steady, color back in his face, hands unclenched. She looked at his coat. No badge, no letter. Just a tear at the shoulder where a bullet had kissed too close. Whatever he was running from, it hadn't finished chasing. But for now, he was warm. And in this house, that meant he was theirs. By the second day, the stranger could sit upright. By the third, he asked her name. She didn't give it. Instead, she handed him a bowl of broth and told him to eat slowly. The boys watched him with quiet suspicion, except for Nate, who placed a blanket over the man's feet when he wasn't looking. He called himself Jonah. Didn't say where he'd come from, but the way he flinched at thunder and slept with one eye cracked open told her enough. He wasn't the kind who got chased. He was the kind who ran from things no one else had seen and lived long enough to regret it. On the fourth night, the dog barked. Not at the door, at the hills. She stood at the porch, rifle in hand, feeling the storm behind the silence. Jonah joined her. "They won't knock," he said, then looked at her, not like a man pleading, but warning. She didn't answer. Inside, the children slept. Outside, the snow had covered the path, the tracks, the blood. But nothing covered the past forever. She looked at Jonah and said only, "If you brought something here, you stay to finish it." His voice was hoarse. "I didn't mean to bring it." "That doesn't matter," she said. She didn't say she'd protect him. She didn't say she wouldn't. But she handed him the second rifle, and he took it like someone who understood what kind of woman stood beside him now. Not kin, not lover. A keeper of the fire, and the line no one crossed. The storm broke at dawn, not with light, but with stillness. The kind of stillness that presses against the ribs like a hand. No birds, no wind. Just silence, wide as the sky. She'd learned long ago. Silence was never empty. It meant watching. Waiting. She was already dressed when Jonah came down the stairs, the rifle slung across his back like a sin he couldn't put down. The scar on his jaw looked older in the morning light, But his eyes, they had that brittle shine, like glass too thin to touch. "They'll come today," he said, not as a question. She nodded. The kettle whistled low on the stove, steam rising like breath from a dying horse. The boy stirred upstairs, unaware of what the day might hold. She poured 2 mugs and handed him one. Their fingers touched, calloused and cold, bone beneath skin. 2 strangers, tied not by trust, but necessity. He sat at the table but didn't drink, his hands wrapped around the mug as if it were something he could hold to stop himself from falling apart. Outside, the snow glowed blue, too bright, too clean, as if the land itself was trying to look innocent. They ate quietly. Bread, jerky, boiled potatoes. A funeral meal before the dead arrived. By noon, the dog began to pace. By 1, Jonah stood at the window like a prisoner watching for his executioner. Then at 2, they came. 3 riders, dark coats, faces hidden by scarves and hats. Not rushing, not hunting, just arriving. Like they already knew no one inside would be foolish enough to stop them. But she wasn't made of foolishness. She was made of frost and ash and stitched up silence. She sent the boys upstairs with their books and locked the door behind them, gave Levi the small pistol with shaking fingers, and told him only one thing. "Don't be brave. Be ready." At first, no one moved. The boys stayed huddled in the cellar stairwell, quiet as seeds underground. Jonah leaned against the wall, eyes rimmed red, as if disbelief itself bruised him. She opened the door at noon. The air was sharp with smoke. Snow blackened in patches around the fence where the lantern had burst. 1 chicken was gone, either trampled or taken. The water barrel had a bullet through the side. They hadn't meant to kill. Not yet. Just to remind her, they still could. She stepped outside, boots crunching ice. The wind had changed direction. That mattered. It always mattered. It meant the storm was turning, and so was something else. Behind her, Jonah emerged. No rifle this time, just his hands in plain view, as if to say, "I'm not here to take. I'm here to bear witness." He picked up a charred shard of lantern glass from the snow and turned it over in his fingers. "This was mine to settle," he said softly. "No," she answered. "It was yours to carry. There's a difference." He looked at her then, not like a man used to mercy, but like someone who forgot it could come without a cost. "I ran," he said. "You stopped," she replied. The boys came out slowly, one by one. Levi first, walking like he expected to be told off for firing the pistol. She didn't. Instead, she took the gun from his belt, checked the chamber, and handed it back. "Next time," she said, "aim for the legs." He blinked, then nodded, a little straighter. By evening, the wind picked up again. No riders returned, but neither did sleep. They gathered by the fire, not speaking much. Jonah carved wood, a habit of his now. The boys watched. She mended socks with fingers still raw from gripping the shotgun too long. And then Nate, the smallest, spoke. "Are they going to come back?" The question hung in the room like chimney smoke. She looked at him, at all of them, and said the only truth that mattered, "Maybe." A pause. "But next time, they won't find strangers here. They'll find a family." She didn't know when she started believing it. Maybe in the cellar. Maybe when Jonah stood beside her at the window. Maybe when Levi pulled the trigger, not to kill, but to say, "We are not prey." No one spoke again that night, but something shifted, not relief, that never comes easy. What came was weight, shared now. The snow melted in sheets, not fast, but faster than it should have. The earth beneath was still hard, but something green had started to crack the surface by the porch. She noticed it while fetching water. One stubborn sprig, curved and wrong-colored, like a promise the world hadn't meant to make, but did anyway. Jonah came back from the trap line with nothing but frost-bitten fingers and 3 words. "They're really gone." She didn't answer, just poured water into the kettle and set it over the fire. The boys were quieter these days, not afraid, not like before. Just watching her, watching him, watching each other like people do when they start to understand the shape of what they're inside of. It wasn't a house anymore. It was a home under siege by time, not guns. Jonah fixed the doorframe that day. No one asked him. He didn't say a word while he worked, just stripped off the broken boards, nailed new ones with what little was left in the bin. She watched from the window, one child on her hip and another asleep in a blanket near the stove. She thought, not for the first time, this isn't the life I wanted. It's the one that asked for me. By dusk, the wind had gone still. They ate quietly, no meat, just dried beans and leftover cornbread. But no one complained. After supper, Jonah stood by the fire, turned a small piece of cedar in his hands. "I've been thinking," he said. She waited. "I could go. West. Bring back seed. Maybe a goat. Maybe school books." She looked at him carefully. "You'd come back?" He met her eyes then. Really met them. "Yes," she considered, then nodded once. "You'll need rope and boots." That was the end of it. No speech, no tearful goodbyes. Just the understanding. The world had split open, and they'd chosen to build a bridge instead of a wall. Later that night, she found Nate in the storage room, curled up beside a crate of empty jars. "You okay?" she asked. He didn't look up, just whispered, "You won't leave too?" She knelt beside him, tucked her coat around his shoulders. "No, baby," she said. "I've got roots in this place now." He leaned into her, small, warm, not heavy, but not weightless either, like something living, something growing, holding on. In the morning, Jonah saddled up with a bag over his shoulder and a scar under his eye that hadn't fully faded. She stood on the porch. "You get back before the thaw," she said, "or you'll find your boots floating." He smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. "You'll keep 'em waiting?" She looked at the boys behind her. "No," she said. "We'll keep building." As he rode out, the wind picked up again, but not cold this time. Just movement, the kind that comes when the road doesn't end. It just turns into something else. He came back in the rain, not with a wagon load of miracles, just seed, a goat, thin but standing, and books, water-stained, tied with twine. It was enough. The trail had turned to mud, the wind blew sideways, and the goat bleated the whole way, but he rode with his head up and eyes clear, like a man who knew he belonged where he was going. She saw him from the field, knees deep in wet earth, teaching Levi how to plant in rows. They both looked up, didn't wave, didn't run, just nodded, like nothing had broken, like everything had held. That evening, the roof leaked, the stew burned. Two of the boys fought over a bent spoon, and Jonah accidentally knocked over the lamp trying to break it up. Glass shattered, fire flared, and then her voice firm. "Stop!" It wasn't a shout. It didn't need to be. They froze. She crossed the room, lifted the lamp, set it straight again. "You want to live here," she said. "You learn to share." And clean. No one argued. After Jonah helped her mop the floor, the silence between them was thicker than usual. Not tense, just full. He asked finally, "You still thinking of leaving?" She looked around, at the cracked window patched with wax paper, at the boys asleep on quilts too thin for the season, at the pot bubbling again, this time without burning, at the goat sleeping beside the stove like it had always lived there. She shook her head. "This place has holes," she said, "but it holds." Later in the dark, she sat alone by the fire. The baby fussed in his sleep. Rain tapped the roof like fingers counting time. She reached for her sewing basket and opened the tin where she kept small things that didn't fit anywhere else. Inside were buttons, a cracked comb, a bullet Jonah had dug from the barn door, and a square of paper folded 12 times. A letter from a man who never met her, promising a new life that never arrived. She held it a long time, then fed it to the fire. It burned fast. Outside, the wind rattled but didn't break anything. Not tonight. And for the first time since she'd stepped off the stagecoach, the house felt still, not from emptiness, but from being full.